let's see some people break down white slavery, because this is another thing that blew my mind. This came later. And this, learning about this is what broke some of those chains around, you know, my ancestry. I wasn't able to access my ancestors that were European and different things like that. George Washington's. I had to learn this history before I can get to that part of my ancestry, if that makes sense. And it's energetic blocks, right? So we're getting unblocked today. We're getting unblocked. Oh, I forgot to share this. And then let me check again, because I don't be sharing stuff and I be thinking I'm sharing it. Okay, I'm sharing it. I'm sharing it. I'm sharing it.
They are two very distinguished colleagues from World in Action, and who both had spent many, many years in probably the finest investigative operation in this country has ever mounted. And having said all of that, I'd like to introduce them today.
Lord. Okay. Now.
And tell you about this extraordinary book. Go ahead.
Well, this book began not as a book, but began as a TV documentary. This is what we thought. Its origins are Australia. I was in Australia on holiday. My wife is Australian, and I was in that wonderful institution, the Mitchell Library in Sydney. And I came across there, understandably, the Australians are kind of interested in convicts and transportation, and they have a vast collection on convicts and transportation. And I came across an astonishing book. It was very old, very obscure, and it amazed me. It told of how women were in the 18th and 17th centuries were, and children too, were shipped and sold in America. And I'd never heard of this. I'd never heard of the details. And while this only a bit of the story, it disturbed me and encouraged me and horrified me. So I thought, great story. And Don and I had been talking about how do we...
I just had to say, why does this man have the glasses? Why is them glasses on the very tip of that nose? Like that's all I want to say. If you look down a little too hard, them bad boys is sliding clean off his face. Why? Why? Anyway.
How do we sell a story about the abolition of slavery? We've been talking about it and we hadn't come up with anything. I came back to England with the photocopy of this book, and he will tell you what happened then.
Well, them glasses got to be glued to the edge of his, because I ain't never had no glasses where to be glued to the edge of his nose, because how it's not moving. Anyway,
suppose that I'm Laurel to Mike's Hardy, in that it was another fine mess he got into. In that I read the photocopies of what he had brought back, and what he brought back was photocopies of a book written by a man called Abbott Emerson Smith, who had written about how women, mainly prostitutes, but all sorts of other people as well, who were taken out of the Bridewell prison in London in the early 1600s and sent off to new colonies in America as brides for the planters, if you like.
Wow.
So these were women of marriageable age or of breeding age or whatever,
Disgusting.
who would be sent off. Up until then, of course, your brand new colony was all men, and for this to become viable, they needed women.
Wow.
And this seemed to be an astonishing thing. And so it went from there, and one looked at this and thought, well, this is just the tip of something. This is actually the edge of something here. And so the very fact that these women were taken out of the penal system in Britain, in England, and sent off to the new colonies, with no say for themselves about whether or not they went or not. So the interesting thing was, what was it they were going into? What was it was already there that these people could just be taken out and shipped 3,000 miles away? And so we started to look at what this possibly could mean, what the wider context was of that. And that's how it began.
And we unearthed a wider and wider story. We found it wasn't just women, it was children, it was convicts, it was prisoners of war, it was all sorts. It was also people who signed up as indentured servants to get to America free they didn't have to pay the passage, the poor. They would be contracted, indentured by merchants, by captains, and by planters' agents to go to America free, in return for which they gave up their rights to their labour for several years. It was supposed to be, according to the history, it's 4 or 5 years. In fact, it could be as many as 12. And what they didn't realise was that they were signing away all their rights, and they had become chattels. They were used as property, regarded as property. Now, as we began to investigate this, and we used all the kind of resources that investigators do. We look at every kind of book, every kind of official report, etc., diaries, letters. We realised it was an enormous story, and it was also something which refuted one of the great ideas one of the key ideas of the development of slavery, which is that in 1619 slavery began in America with the arrival of 20 and odd Negroes, as they were called, sold, according to accounts, by a Dutch captain to planters in England, and this was where slavery began. It wasn't true. Slavery had begun earlier. Children and women and convicts had been sold earlier than that, and although a small number of Africans were subsequently brought to Virginia and sold over the next decades, only very few, only 350 years later. 20 years later. But meantime, hundreds, thousands of poor whites were being brought in, and on various convicts and children, etc., and they were being enslaved. So that started us thinking this is an enormous story. It was a story too big, in fact, to sell to television. There were so many aspects of it, we didn't know how to compact it. But we did think it was an important and terrific book.
Yeah.
The book they're talking about is White Cargo. When I started reading that, when I tell you my mind blew up into pieces. When I tell you my mind blew up into pieces, what is he? And it makes complete and total logical sense how the first colonies were all men. How do they populate? How did they populate? Most of the explorers were men. When they were just exploring and figuring out where to settle, they were nothing but men. And they were barely surviving, most of them. If you go and read any of their voyages in America, it was few and far between of them, and they barely survived. And the only way they could survive is indigenous people going light on their asses and taking their hand and be like, okay, here, come through here, right? So these little spurts of Europeans that set up colonies in the Americas, when they finally were able to survive by making enough connections with the indigenous people, because there's no other way, because you have no population. How are you going to come on a continent full of people? Because that's how you tell a story. Like, they just came over here and it was like, what's up? What you going to do? You can't do nothing. Hell no, y'all wasn't on that energy. Y'all was not on that energy. Okay, I got a whole book. I think I left it at home because it's very important. About the Indian Wars that were going on for just about the entire time. hundreds of years, the entire time. It wasn't like that. You had to negotiate and get you an ally tribe to be with, otherwise you gone. That's even in the American Revolution. Most of the people who was fighting in the American Revolution was indigenous people, Choctaw, right? The Cherokee, the different tribes. It's really the tribes against the other tribes, and they got a few Europeans sprinkled in there. That's the truth, right? So how was they populated? They was clearing out the prisons. They were clearing out the streets with the prostitutes from out the prisons, off the streets, kidnapping. What they're doing till this day, kidnapping, right? Snatching up little children. They say kids. What kids? Clearing out them orphanages. Clearing out them orphanages. And sending them children across the way. Their own people. And guess what? I have a book that breaks down, it talks about, and they talk about it in their book, I'm pretty sure, the few African slaves that they did get were far more expensive, not only to get them in the first place, but the actual price of the slave compared to going to Ireland, right? Going off the coast of Ireland. They were literally kidnapping people off the coast of Ireland, snatching them up, sending them to Australia, sending them to the Barbary Coast, the Caribbean islands, the sugar cane plantation. The reason why Jamaicans, if you listen to a Jamaican, and if you listen to some Irish person, you can hear similarities in their dialect. Why? Because there are so many Irish slaves that came to the plantation. And if you say, oh, there's a lot of Irish heritage in Jamaica, they're going to assume that the Irish were the slave owners. No, 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 no. They were enslaved. Okay? A lot of them. So, I even was reading a book about in Mississippi, how when they wanted to clear the land, there's mosquitoes. There's a lot of mosquitoes was killing people with malaria and all this other stuff. They wasn't sending the slaves that they wanted to keep to clear that land. They was sending Irish. Why? Because they did not care if they died. They were cheap. They were cheap, if not free. So they gonna send the Irish slaves to go and clear out the land, right? To do the land clearing, right? So they can build on it and build crops and other stuff like that. And they would keep the African slave that they spent a lot of money on, right? Or the indigenous slave that they had to go and capture or buy from another part of the, right? Who knew the land, who understand, who had the skills, right? Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. This blew my whole entire mind.
And then the question was, if we were right on what was going on, the question in your mind immediately is, as a journalist, is, well, why doesn't everybody know this already? Or have we just got the wrong end of the stick here? And that is, of course, everybody's fear. I mean, it's the fear if you're doing something contemporary, just as it is if you're doing something that's historical. That the famous kind of thing was, that I remember when we worked in World in Action, was there would be the person who would turn up with 3 briefcases full of documents. And your first thing in your mind was, is this person a crank or are they real? They've got a bee on their bonnet, they feel aggrieved, something terrible as far as they're concerned has happened in their lives. The question in your mind is, am I on the edge of a great story here, or is this another one of the astonishing numbers of cranks, the kind of a green and red ink brigade, yet again turning up with 1,000 documents to prove something which is totally and utterly mad, and it's just a bee in their bonnet. So, of course, we were immediately worried about that as well. But we noticed certain patterns that, as we started to look at this, that appeared. One of which was that when you looked at these early people who were sent out, like Mike just talked about, children were sent out, street children were rounded up and sent off. And when you read about the official versions as to why this was happening in the very early 17th century, the official versions were always that this was a great humanitarian thing, that they were taking these poor urchins off the street and sending them off to start a new life in these fabulous new colonies, where instead of having a dead-end life where they die on the streets of malnutrition and illness, they would be given a new chance. Well, if that were true, it suddenly occurred to us, we would surely know that, because that would be one of the greatest humanitarian things that's ever happened in the history of the world. Why was it that's the way it was painted up at the time, which it was? Even John Donne, the famous poet, who was the Dean of St. Paul's, actually gave sermons from the pulpit of St. Paul's Cathedral about how there's a wonderful humanitarian thing, that these kids who have been sent off for this fresh chance. If that was true, why isn't it something, you'd know that at school, you'd be taught about. But interestingly, it's something which at the time was made a big deal of, but not now. It's not on any syllabus. So there was obviously something odd about this.
Well, it's still perpetuated. You find that some history books talk glowingly about how starving kids were sent to America and apprenticed. You still find it where it happened. The
Apprentice.
St. Bride's Church.
Apprentice.
Believe there is a commemoration of the apprentices who were saved and sent to America. We looked at the documents, as you should. Looked at every document. I'm sure historians must have done, but they missed a lot, because those documents showed that these children were picked up and they were going to be, how they were going to be sold and what they were going to be priced for and what rights they didn't have. In fact, the company gave to itself all rights over these children. Wow. It pretended to anxious parents, there were some, that no, they would be given apprenticeships, they'd get land in the end. Nonsense. Most of them were dead within a year anyway. But,
Wow.
this is still perpetuated. Sorry, I interrupted there.
Quite right, quite
Do
right.
you hear this? Do you hear this? Now, this is what these people were doing with each other themselves. I said, it was Africans that was selling Africans, to America. I remember in school, I had a substitute teacher that said that there was about 2-3 black people in the class, and the rest were white, and they were telling the story about slavery, and he busted out talking about, yeah, because really, Africans, they were selling each other, and basically, we just bought them and brought them across, right? So it's just like, bruh, what, right? But they're never gonna tell you the story of how they were snatching up their own. And what we have to understand is it's not about their own people, these people, that people, their races. It ain't about that. It's about dollars and cents. It's about class. It's about making money. It's about making money. They don't. Who care? They don't care. They don't care about racism. The most racist people you will ever find in the world are poor people. Poor people that have no power at all whatsoever. That's the ones on prescription drugs and drunk out homeless on the street. Some of them, that's gonna be some of the most racist people that you ever going to meet or find. Why? Because that's who they want to be racist. They want them to be fighting with other races of people, right? And they want them to believe that they are superior no matter what. Meanwhile, they being treated the exact same way. They have the exact same history as these people that they are fighting with, right? But in their mind, they are superior. Their ancestors was the slave owners, when in reality, their ancestors might have been one of the few children that was snatched up off the street and came over here and actually survived. This man said they were snatching children off the street, telling their parents and telling everybody that, this is going to be a great thing. These kids who were homeless, they might have starved on the street, died of all the nasty ass plagues they had over there because they wasn't taking no baths. We brought them to America. We're going to bring them to America, and, they're going to work for a little while, right? Because we need, people to help with the colony. But actually, they're not going to call it work. It's going to be, they're going to have a, what I can give the white community. They know how to articulate some shit. Marketing, boy, they know how to use that word. Y'all need to get better at using that word. I was doing something in the straight up hood in Houston, and they had one random little tiny house in the middle of the hood. Right, because I've been doing carpentry, I've been doing wallpaper, I was doing wallpaper. So they had this real nice house in the middle of the hood that they just built up, right? And I get in there, and yeah, they're like, the neighborhood is still developing. It's a developing neighborhood, and sometimes with developing neighborhood, I said, girl, you in the hood. You in the hood. This ain't no damn developing neighborhood, girl. You are in the hood. But guess what? They know how to word some shit. He said, they were sitting up there telling these parents. They were telling the parents. They were telling everybody in the church. The church was a part of it. This is why church-run adoption agencies till this day, they've been selling kids since the very beginning, right? They's talking about, oh yeah, they're gonna get over there and they're gonna have a brand new life. We have nice homes and everything, and they are going to have an apprenticeship, and and once they finish their apprenticeship, they're going to own land. And yeah, and he said they get over there and within a year they would die. They were okay, for each child I'm paying, I may pay about 10 shekels, whatever the hell they was using back in the day, and I'll get a year out of them, and then I have to get some more, but it's fine. By that time I'll have the house built for So we need to know, as black people and white people and whatever kind of people that they're calling you, that, and this is what I also learned, the curse of whiteness. There is a curse of blackness, but there's also a curse of whiteness. Because for white people, because I grew up with white people, mostly white people, when white people go through stuff, when white women go through stuff, when white men go through stuff, you want to talk about toxic positivity. That is the curse of whiteness. Toxic positivity is the curse of whiteness. And I'm glad this verbiage has gotten popular, so I don't have to explain it too much. But toxic positivity is the curse of whiteness, because it doesn't matter what they've gone through, they haven't gone through shit. It's creepy. And not even for other races, because it is for other races. We have no compassion for them at all whatsoever. We're like, bitch, you're white. You're white. Let's go and look this up. Because right, they are white. So for example, all these women that snatched up, prostitutes and all this other stuff, and just women off the street, kidnapped, snatched up, sent to the colonies before any African, 20 of the odd African slaves came over there. Simply, they said breeding age. He said breeding age. Do you know what that means? 12. That means 11, 12. As long as they were breeding age, they were sent over. Do you think they were sent over like they tell the story of Pocahontas, to fall in love with some amazing colonel, whatever, and to have a beautiful, lovely life? No. They were sent there to be breeders for grown men, diseased ass men, dirty ass, nasty grown men, to breed and to bring the population up, so they have some people who can fight and die, so the kings and queens can have more land. So do you understand the energy when it comes to the American Revolution? What they was on, right? What they was on? They're talking about, what freedom were you fighting for? They was really fighting for some freedom. That's what you got to understand. But because of the toxic positivity of the whiteness, the curse of whiteness, because white represents purity, represents blah, blah, blah. It represents godliness. And da, da, da. So it doesn't matter what this white man is doing to this white woman, or what this white man is doing to these children, these white children. They are godly and blah, 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 blah. They are pure, right? They're lying. You're a liar. You're a liar. This is why I made a video about the exorcism. Oh, this is crazy. That's be connected. I did a reaction to an exorcism, a video of this Catholic priest talking about how he exorcised some woman. And it made me think, all the exorcist movies are about white women. They're always exorcising a demon out of a white woman. And then I actually thought deeper about it. It ain't no white woman. They're not exorcising a demon out of a white woman. They're exorcising a demon out of a white girl. A breeding aged white girl. I'm just really realizing this part now, right now. Oh, shit. I have chills. I have chills. I don't know if you can see this shit. I have chills. Every exorcist movie is of a barely breeding age, according to these people, white little girl, probably between the ages of 11 and 15, right? Whoa. So you can imagine, if they have a history of sending little white girls, barely breeding age, and this goes back in Europe for a very long time. It ain't even just in America. It's a very long time. They've been doing this to these little white girls. They send them, and they have this Christianity, and they have this dogma and all this other stuff, right? And they have these witch trials, right? If these little girls try to fight and say, no, bitch, I'm not going to be your breeding machine. Fuck you. Get the fuck back up, right? Nah, this ain't right. Da-da-da-da. They try to fight back. They're demonic. They're possessed. They're evil. Right? If you strip away all that little Hollywood bullshit they be putting on these little girls' faces, these are little children. These are little girls that they're demonizing. And think about, they're strapping them to beds and saying their body is doing all this convulsions and all this other shit. Making the girl evil. Making it seem like she is evil. Meanwhile, she's not doing everything that is going on that they're claiming is happening is internal. She's not doing anything to anybody outside of her. But there's crowds of people. There's men, women, right? Pastors, everybody doing things to the little girl, right? So your mind is being conditioned to believe that the girl is evil, even though she ain't doing a damn thing to nobody, but everybody's doing shit to her, and they are pure. Oh, I'm going to end it with that. Oh, my God. That's crazy. That's crazy. Wow. I hope you got something from that. That was deep. Wow. That's crazy how that wraps around. Like, it's like in sequence. Like, each one of my videos is like building on top of each other. This is crazy. I gotta chop these up, and there's so many jewels. And then sometimes it'd be at the very end. I don't know, everybody ain't watching to the very end, so I gotta chop this. That was crazy. Like, subscribe, comment. I can't even talk. Like, subscribe, comment. I have trap affirmations. This is more of a healing tool for your subconscious mind. This is to break through those blocks and to heal trauma. Some of this trauma. That's crazy. I feel like just knowing that, I want to make documents in that program because I have a lot of different documents, worksheets, and different things like that for healing. And on top of the music, right, that has the love frequencies. I'm speaking love vibrations for health, wealth, happiness, and love through music. This is one of the most powerful healing tools. And then I also have different worksheets and different things like that to help work through it, and also planners, trackers, right? This is real movement. It's the healing, and it's also the movement to get you into the action of creating the life that you want. But that can of worms just made me want to add. And so when you get access to it, so it's in trapaffirmations.com. Once you get access to it, you'll get access to all those documents I'm talking about, as well as the music. And if I get ideas or whatever, I'll continue to add to those documents and different things like that, because it's just, yeah, you'll have lifetime access to it. So go to there if you want to get that healing information, and also if you want to heal your lineage, your ancestry. Doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Chinese, whatever. These principles, the checklist, different things like that will work because it's basic principles of genealogy and of speaking to your ancestors and different things like that. When I say ancestors, I'm not talking about in the spiritual world. I'm talking about your grandmama. I'm talking about your mother, your parents, your people, and going from there. So that program is ancestryalignmentacademy.com. Like, subscribe, comment. I'll see y'all on the next video.